Masechet Baba Mesia Daf Kof Tet Zayin. Yesterday we saw machloket between Rav Yehuda and Rav Huna. Rav Yehuda said if someone takes millstones as collateral, let's say he takes both upper and lower, then that lender violates two prohibitions, one for taking the upper and one for taking the lower. However, he does not violate the more general prohibition of ki nefesh hu chovel, of taking something that's used for preparing food. That's a separate prohibition that applies to all other things besides a millstone, because the Torah mentions them separately. This is as opposed to Rav Huna, who says if someone takes a millstone upper and lower, he violates three prohibitions, one for the upper, one for the lower. That Rav Yehuda agrees with, but Rav Huna will say, and also the general prohibition. So now we have a baraita that supports Rav Yehuda. The proof is actually from two baraitot, and it's somewhat of a roundabout proof. But let's see what it is. Chaval zog shel saparim v'semed shel parot chayav shetayim ze be'asmo v'ze be'asmo eno chayav ela achat. If someone steals a pair of scissors or a pair of cows, it's either talking about the cows themselves or the yoke that combines the cows, but it's a yoke that has two pieces and you put them together. In these cases, one is liable for two sets of violations, two sets of lashes. That's because scissors, like millstones, have two pieces that you put together, and so just like with the millstone, now you actually need both the upper and lower millstone for it to work, and yet the Torah says you're liable for the upper and for the lower, two separate things. And so too, this baraita teaches if one steals a pair of scissors, well, you need both together for it to work. Nevertheless, these are two counts of the prohibition, not of millstone, but of the general prohibition of taking as collateral an item that is used for food preparation. And however, if you take only one part of a scissor, or only one half of a pair of cows or of the yoke, then that's only one violation. So same, just like with millstones, that would be the same thing. That's this baraita's teaching. Now, so far there's no proof because Rav Huna would agree with this as well. But now we have another baraita that's going to compare this case to the millstone directly. Chaval zog shel saparim v'semed shel bakar yachol lo yehe chayav ela achat. תלמוד לומר לא יחבול רחיים ורחב. מה רחיים ורחב? שהם מיוחדים, שני חילים ועושים מלאכה אחת ועלה על זה בפני עצמו ועל זה בפני עצמו. אף כל דברים שהן שני חילים מיוחדים ועושים מלאכה אחת, חייב על זה בפני עצמו ועל זה בפני עצמו. This baraita teaches that if someone takes as collateral a pair of scissors or a pair of cows that work together, they're yoked together, you might think that you'd only be liable to one set of lashes because the scissors are one item together. You need both halves in order for it to work. So therefore that would be considered one vessel. But that's why the Torah goes out of its way to give an example of not taking collateral from a lower and upper millstone. Why does the Torah say that? Why not just say don't take anything that you need for food? So what's special about that? Just like a millstone, upper and lower millstones are special in that they are two separate vessels, but they work together in order to perform one task. And over there it specifies them separately to teach you that you're liable for the upper millstone, one count of lashes, and for the lower millstone, another set of lashes. So we learn from there to all other items that if they are separate items, but they work together to perform one task, you're nevertheless liable for each of them, even if you take half of a scissor or one of a pair of cows. One is liable for one count, and if you take both of them, a whole pair of scissors or a whole pair of cows, then you're liable to two. So this teaches really the same thing as the first baraita. However, it adds a comparison, a derivation from the millstone. Now, what do you see here? That when it talks about millstone, it only says that one would be liable to two counts all together, right? One for the upper, one for the lower. That's it. That's the opinion of Rav Yehuda. If it was Rav Huna would say, oh, you're liable for the upper, the lower, and for the general prohibition. But you see, the baraita doesn't say anything about that, and therefore, this would seem to support Rav Yehuda. Next, we have a story. Hahu gabra de chabal sakina de ashkabta mechabre. Someone took a slaughtering knife, a shechita knife, as collateral from someone else. But this is used for food. Ata lekamed Abaye amar le zil ahadre. So the case came to Abaye, and Abaye said to the lender, you have to return this slaughtering knife to the borrower. You're not allowed to take that as collateral. Ta'avele kilisha osim bo ochel nefesh is used for food. Veta kum bedina Allah. Now we understand he owes you money. Okay, bring him to court and claim the money. And you have to bring some kind of proof that he owes you the money. In other words, you have to bring proof independently of the fact that you were holding on to this knife. The fact that you had this knife is not sufficient proof that he owes you money because you weren't allowed to take that knife in the first place. Give him back the knife and go get witnesses or swear or do something to try to collect your money in some other way. That is the opinion of Abaye. Rava Amar lo sarich lemekam bedina Allah ve'achol lit'on ad kedeh demehen. Rava says, yes, he agrees he has to return the knife. That's true because it's used for food. However, he does not have to bring him to court and prove that he's owed money because since he has possession of that knife, he had possession of the knife until he gives it back, so he can claim up to the value of the knife. What's the idea here? Rava seems to be following amigo reasoning. Since this lender could have claimed the slaughtering knife is mine. He could have just said, it belongs to me. It's in his possession. Right? Let the other guy prove that not so. He could have claimed, I bought it from him. And since he could have made that claim because he is in possession of it, so therefore, and then he would just keep it. Therefore, we should believe him if he says, "Oh, I took this as collateral, but that guy owes me this much money." So let's say he owes him $200. He claims he owes $200, and the knife is worth $100. So therefore, he has to return the knife, but he can claim up to the value of the knife, up to $100, and he doesn't have to give any further proof of it, since he could have taken the knife and kept it and claimed that he bought it. Now we ask, how come Abaye disagrees with what Rava just said? That makes sense. Why can't he claim up to the value of the knife without any further proof? After all, this case of the knife seems to be exactly the case of a different case where the father of Shemuel ruled, and in that case, someone's goats came and ate peeled barley. Some guy had peeled barley out in his field, drying out in the field, and someone else's goat came and ate it. And so the owner of the field came and grabbed the goat because, right, he has a claim. And so he grabbed the goat and he said, this goat, ate a lot of my barley and he owes me money. And the father of Shemuel says that he has a valid claim and he can take up to the value of the goat. Even if the goat ate $1,000 worth of barley, but the goat itself is only worth $500, so he can claim $500 without any further proof, because he could have kept the goat and said, this goat is mine, I bought it. So since he would have been believed to say that, he's also believed regarding this claim. So we see here that this is a valid form of reasoning, that if you have some item and you could claim it as your own, then you're also believed to say, I took it from him and he owes me because of these damages or because he owes me from a loan. So how come Abaye does not agree with this reasoning? Hatam la midida abdal oshule ulagudehu. Hacha midida abid loshule ulagudehu. And Rava can answer, Abaye can answer, there's a difference. In that case of the goat is not an item that's usually lent out or rented out. And therefore, if this guy's in possession of a goat, and if he would say, oh, I bought it, he would be believed. However, a knife, a slaughtering knife, is something that often is lent out or rented out. And therefore, when someone is in possession of a knife, We don't, and if he says, "Oh, I bought it," we don't believe him. This is something that people always are lending out or renting out. So he says, no, you have to bring a proof that it's yours, that you bought it. Otherwise, possession of something that is usually rented out is not proof of ownership. And so you don't have a migo that you could have said it's mine. And since you could not have claimed that it's mine, I wouldn't have believed you. Therefore, we'd also don't believe you that he necessarily owes you money. And that's why Baya said you have to bring proof, right? This is a knife. A knife is often rented out. And so just because you have the knife doesn't mean anything. Return the knife. You're not allowed to take that as collateral. And come and bring proof that this guy owes you money. That's different from a goat. If the guy has a goat, nobody lends out goats. You must be that it's reasonable that it's yours. And so we would have believed you if it's yours. If you say you grabbed it because he owes you money, then we also will believe you that he owes you that money for the damages of the barley. And this is proven from a message that Rav Huna bar Avin sent. And he said, if you have an item that you usually rent out or lend out, and the person who's in possession of it claims, "Oh, it's mine because I bought it," he's not believed. These are things that people always have that they just borrowed, but doesn't mean it's theirs. And that is the reason why Abaye disagrees with Rava in this case. Okay, now we turn the tables. V'Rava let le hai sevara. Rava, this is a good point. How come you don't also say that a knife is something that you often lend out, and therefore don't have that migo? In fact, Rava himself removed scissors for cutting wool, shears. This is a pair of Roman shears. Really amazing that we have such an item that we found. Or a book of Agadah. This is also very interesting. In general, Torah She'Ba'al Peh remained Ba'al Peh throughout the time of the Tanaim and Amoraim. The Mishnah was not written down, as far as we can tell. Neither the majority of the Talmud. However, Agadah, because these are long derashot, explanations of Pesukim, Meshalim, parables, all kinds of things. So this that would be difficult to remember. So Agadah was permitted to be written down. So you have a book of Agadah. Anyway, these orphans had physical possession of the shears and the book of Agadah. However, there was a owner that claimed them and said, "No, I only lent it out to him, to this guy, and then the guy died, but it belongs to me." And the Vas said, "Oh, these are things that people often lend out, shears and the book of Agadah. People are lending, I want to read some Agadah. Can I borrow your scroll of Agadah?" And so since people would often lend these out or rent them out, therefore possession is not proof of ownership. So you see, Rava himself agreed with that. And so why does Rava not say the same thing here, that since a knife is something that's often rented out, therefore the lender who grabbed the knife and took it as collateral and says, "Oh, I could have claimed I bought it, therefore believe me that he owes me money." No, you could not have claimed that you bought it because it's something that's often rented out. Amar lach Rava, hainame kevan demi pagema kabdeina shevela moshle. Rava says this is not like a regular knife. A slaughtering knife is very special in that if it has one nick in it, then it's not kosher anymore. So people that own the slaughtering knife generally do not lend it out, right? Because the person borrowing is not going to be so careful to keep it very sharp without any nick, a scratch, and therefore, since this is an item that's actually not generally lent out, the fact that this guy, the lender, has it in his possession means that he could, in fact, have claimed that he bought it and it's his. Since he could have claimed that, we also believe him to say that he took it as collateral and the other guy owes him money, and that the other borrower will have to pay him up to the value of that slaughtering knife. Hadran alach ha-mikabel. We now begin the 10th and last perek of Masechet Baba Metzia, Habayit ve'ha'aliyah shel shenayim shenaflu, shenehem cholkin ba'esim u'ba'abanim u'be'afar. ורואים אלו אבנים עשויות להשתבר, אם היה אחד מהן מכיר מקצת אבניו, נוטלן, ועולות לו מן החשבון. Let's say you have two people living in a building, one on the lower floor and one on the upper floor, and that building collapses. So they both divide the wood, the stones, and the dirt equally. These are all useful items. They wouldn't throw them away and buy new ones. They would reuse those same stones and the same wood when they go and rebuild. So these are worth money. And so since they both lived in this and shared this house, therefore they split the building material also. Now, they can look at the stones to see which ones were likely to break, the ones from the upper or the ones from the lower. And if they can figure out that, let's say, the ones on the upper story, since they fell farther, they're probably the ones that broke. Well, if they can figure that out, then the one in the lower story will take the whole bricks and the one in the upper story will take the broken bricks, and vice versa, if they figure it out the other way. Now, if one of them recognizes his stones, says, listen, when I built the upper story, I used this type of brick. They were this color and this size. So if he actually recognizes these are my bricks, then he claims them and he takes them, and they count towards his amount of stones, such that the other guy will take an equal number of stones from the rest of the pile. So if there were some red stones that the upper guy recognizes, here, these 50 stones are mine because they're red. I know that these are mine. So then the guy from the lower story will take 50 stones for himself that are not red. As opposed to, it's not like he takes those and then the rest they split equally. No, he takes those. That counts towards his number of total stones, and the other one takes an equal amount, and then they would split the rest. That's the Mishnah. Now, this line that says, we look and see which ones were the likely ones to break, and then whoever those belong to will have to take the broken ones. So we can see from here that it's possible to look at the remains of after it fell, or maybe someone saw it falling, and we can figure out whether it fell because of pressure, that the lower story was weak and it buckled, and that caused the upper story to fall. In that case, the broken stones are from the lower story, because we see that the lower story broke first and then the upper came down on it. Or whether it was from a blow, meaning that the upper story broke and collapsed upon the first story, causing the first story to break, right? So where was the first weakness? Was it in the lower story? Well, then the broken stones are from the lower story, and the upper guy can get the whole ones. But if the upper story is the one that broke first, and then that caused by falling caused the lower story to break, well then it's likely that the broken stones are from the upper story, and the guy that owns the lower story can take the whole stones. Okay, so it seems that one can tell, based on witnesses, and see who was there and who saw it. If you can always tell which ones broke first, then how come over here it says they split all of the material? Why should they split all the material equally? We shouldn't split all the whole stones equally and the broken stones equally. No, we should go investigate, see who saw it, see who can tell. And if it was in fact by a blow that it fell, so then the broken ones belong to the upper guy. And if it was by pressure, then the broken ones belong to the lower guy. So they should not split equally. They should investigate who the broken stones are more likely to belong to. And so the answer is La Sericha de Nafil Balayla. It must be that the Resha that says you split everything totally equally is when it fell at night and nobody saw exactly how it fell. Oh, so let's look at it again when in the morning. We'll look at the remains and we could tell do some forensic investigation and figure out how it fell. Depaninu, no, they already cleared it away. They cleared it away fast, and we can't look at it anymore. Let's go see who cleared it away and ask them. Listen, before you cleared it away, what did you see? Was it like this? Was it like that? And we can figure it out. And the answer is that no, there was no one particular person who cleared it away. When the building fell, the people came in the morning. The general public, everybody took some pieces, moved it out, moved it away, and therefore, and they left. And so there's nobody to ask. That's the case. So if there's no way to find out, it's already all cleared out, then you have to split everything equally. However, if there is evidence, someone saw, I saw the lower story buckled first, and then the upper story came down, then in that case, the broken stones belong to the lower guy, and the upper guy gets the whole stones. Next, now why don't we look at whose property the broken stones are in. Somebody owns this courtyard. Wherever the stones fell, they might have fallen to the right, to the left, and wherever courtyard it's in, that person owns all of those bricks, and the other person has to prove that it's not so, because you have to take it out of that person's possession with proof. Three answers. One is the courtyard belongs to both of them. It's a shared ownership. Or let's say it fell into the street, right? They have a house that's right on the street, and it fell into the public domain, so therefore it doesn't belong to either of them. Or it could be that it's two separate courtyards, and one guy owns the one to the right and one goes to the left, but since they live together, so they're not particular with each other about using this courtyard or that courtyard. Both of them, since they live together, they put stuff in this courtyard and that courtyard. And since they're not particular, the fact that a brick is in this courtyard doesn't mean that a person actually owns it. So it's therefore it's a shared ownership. And no one of the people can prove that it's mine because it's here, because he doesn't mind if the other person puts the stuff there also. Now we said if one of them recognizes the stones, then he can take those stones. Now what's the case? How about the other guy? What is his claim? If he agrees, right, this guy has red stones, this one here, look, see, it's a red stone, it's mine. If the other guy says, yeah, you're right, that's a red stone, it's yours, well then, obviously the guy who claims them can keep them, and the other guy would then take a different stone, right, and as a counter to it. So that would be obvious because they all agree. So what would be the chidush? And if he did not say that he did not agree, then why should he take it, right? I say this is red stone, it's mine. You say no, it's not, it's mine. So then, why should we believe one over the other? Rather, it must be a case where one guy says, this is a red stone, it's definitely mine, I know. And the other guy says, I don't know, I'm not sure. And so we have Bari and Shema of a certain claim, and a claim that I don't know, and therefore the certain claim wins out. Lemete v'tibta de Rav Nachman itmar. Maneli biadcha v'hala omer eni yodea. Rav Huna v'Rav Yehuda amre chayav. Rav Nachman v'Rav Yochanan amre patur. Well, this Mishnah, if once we interpret it as Bari and Shema, well then it would seem to be a refutation of the opinion of Rav Nachman, because we have a machloket. If someone says, you owe me 100 dinar. I know for sure that you owe it to me. And the other guy says, listen, I'm not sure. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't remember. So what do? Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda says he has to pay because he doesn't remember, and the other guy does remember. So Bari and Shema, Bari wins out. So that would be supported by this Mishnah. Rav Nachman and Rav Yochanan, however, say no, it doesn't have to pay because he doesn't remember. So the other guy doesn't have proof. Listen, if the guy has proof, he has witnesses, and for sure he can make him pay. But he doesn't come with proof. He just says, I know for sure you owe me 100 dinar. The other guy says, I don't know. So he doesn't have to just give him money just because he doesn't remember. If he said, no, I don't owe you anything, then certainly he wouldn't have to. So he's not going to lie because he's like, maybe I do, maybe I don't. But the other guy has no proof. So Bari and Shema, you don't have to pay. That's Rav Nachman. But this is a challenge because here we just said that if one guy says, these are bricks are definitely mine, the other guy says, I'm not sure, then the other guy does get the bricks, so this seems to contradict Rav Nachman. And the answer is Kedama Rav Nachman, Kegon sheyesh Isaac Shavua benehem, Hachaname, Kegon sheyesh Isaac Shavua benehem, Hechida me'esek Shavua kedarava. De'amar Rava, Maneli biyadcha v'hala omer, En lecha biyadi ela 50 ashar eni yodea, mitoch sheno yachol lishava yeshalem. So Rav Nachman can answer as he has done elsewhere, that this Mishnah is talking about a case where the person who the defendant here is in a situation where he would have to make a vow in order not to pay, and so we could apply the same thing here. What is a case where one would have to make a vow in order not to have to pay? Well, Ravai already gave an example of that. Ravas gives an example. One person says, you owe me 100 dinar. The other one says, no, I only owe you 50. But the rest of it, I'm not sure about. So now this is modeh b'miksat. He admits 50. So now modeh b'miksat has to make a vow in order not to pay the rest of it. And that's, you have to make a vow, even if he says, I owe you 50, and the other, I'm sure I don't owe you, he will still have to make a vow in order not to pay the rest. If he knew for sure he only owes 50 and not the rest, then he could make a vow. But in this case, he knows he has to pay 50, but the other ones he's not sure, other half he's not sure about. So he can't make a vow on something that he doesn't know. He can't vow that he owes it. He can't vow that he doesn't owe it. Maybe he does. He's not sure. Since he cannot vow, he has to pay because he can't get out of it. If he denied the entire claim and then he doesn't have to make a vow. Then, if he's not sure about the entire claim, then he doesn't have to make a vow because he's not modeh b'miksat. But since once he's modeh b'miksat, now he has to make a vow regarding the rest. He can't make a vow, so therefore he has to pay. Rav Nachman says our Mishnah is talking about that kind of case. That's why the guy who claims the stones and says these are mine for sure, and it's in some situation where he would have to make a vow, something like modeh b'miksat, and that's why when he says I'm not sure about the rest, he has to let the other guy take them. But in general, if it's Bari v'Shema, Rav Nachman says that the Bari does not just take the money without proof. Okay, ve'olot lo min ha'cheshbon. The Mishnah ended by saying that if one guy says, these here 50 stones, the red ones are mine, then yes, he gets to take them, but they count towards his quota. And the other guy can take stones equal in number on the other side. So when we say it counts towards his amount, so what does the other guy take? Let's say the guy who makes a claim, these red stones are mine, he knows, and those were whole stones. So the other guy, can he take whole stones or broken stones? Rava at first said broken stones, right? One guy claimed red stones, these are whole ones, I know they're mine. Okay, fine, he gets them. The other guy, he can't take whole stones, rather he takes just broken ones, the same number. Alma kevan damar eni yodea riya tefeh. What we see from here is because the one who cannot identify the stone says, I don't know. Once you say, I don't know, then the situation is worse for you, right? By not knowing, you're going to get 50 broken stones, and the other guy is going to get 50 whole stones. That's Rava's opinion. Amar le'Abaye adraba ha riya tefeh me dehani yada tefeh la yada tu let le v'idach kuluhu dehaich ninhu. Abaye says, no, it's the opposite. By claiming you don't know, the other guy, the one who actually does know, is worse off. How does he figure that? Since he says, these 50 stones, they're red, I recognize them, these are mine. By saying that, he is implying that the rest of them doesn't know. He has no idea, since he doesn't have any claim over all the rest of the hundreds of stones that are there. So the other guy who didn't identify those red stones can say, okay, then all the other ones are mine. You claim those? Fine, I take all the other ones. And so actually, by claiming some of them, if he could only identify a minority of them, then that person identifying them will actually be worse off. So therefore, that's not the way it is. Abaye says that wouldn't make sense, and therefore Abaye rejects this Rava's theory that the other guy gets broken stones. Says, no, the other guy gets whole stones. If one guy says, these 50 red whole stones, I recognize they're mine, then the other guy can get 50 whole stones, so that they're splitting it equally. Well, if so, then what benefit is there to the guy that recognized his own stones? So he recognizes them, he takes them, but the other guy gets equal stones, so then there's no benefit to being the one to recognize them. And the answer is, no, there is benefit, even though they're both getting whole stones. The one that recognizes his own stones, it could be that those were wider stones. There was different sizes of molds of stones, and so if his are wider, he'll get all those wider ones, and the other guy will only get the regular size. Or the one that recognizes them, those were made with higher quality clay. So he can claim those higher quality ones, and the other guy, he'll get whole stones, but not of the higher quality. Next Mishnah, Habayit ve'ha'aliyah, nifchata ha'aliyah ve'en ba'al habayit roseh letaken. Hare ba'al ha'aliyah yored ve'dar lemata ad sheyetaken lo et ha'aliyah. Here again, you have someone living on a lower story and someone living on an upper story. The difference here is that the guy in the lower story owns the whole building, and he's the landlord, renting out the top story to someone else. And here, the top story collapses, or more specifically, the floor of the upper story caves in or has a hole in it. And the owner, the landlord who lives on the downstairs, does not want to pay to fix it. He doesn't want to bother. And so, what is the upper story guy going to do? So the upper story guy, can go and live in the landlord's apartment on the lower story, because he rented an apartment here. He has a right to live in his apartment, and the landlord is unwilling to fix the apartment. So the tenant has a right to go and live in the landlord's apartment. I'm guessing not together, but rather kick him out and say, you said I can live here, until the landlord goes and fixes the upper story, and then he moves back up. That's the opinion of Tanakama. Rabbi Yosef Omer, hatachton noten et hatikra, v'alyon et ha'ma'aziba. Rabbi Yosef says, no, not so. The lower guy, who owns the building, he has to fix the ceiling, meaning the beams and the stones, and the one who lives in the upper story has to provide the plaster. So they actually share the cost, unlike Tanakama, who says that the lower guy, he owns the building, he has to fix everything. Rabbi Yosef says, no, the lower guy, he needs a ceiling, so he has to do at least that, but the plaster that would provide the flooring and privacy of the upper guy, that the upper guy has to fix. And so as long as the owner on the bottom floor just fixes the beams, then you could say, listen, I fixed the beams, the rest is your responsibility. You cannot move into my apartment. You go and fix the plaster and live in your own apartment. Okay, Gemara. Nifcheta bechama. Now it says if it broke, the flooring of the upper story broke. How much does it have to break before you consider it to be unlivable, unusable, and the upper story has a right to come and live in the lower story? Rav amar beruba, ushmuel amar be'arba'a. Rav says it's when the majority of the floor breaks, then that's considered unlivable. As long as the majority is there, so he can live on that part where there is a floor, and the rest of it he can use the whatever he was going to put. He was going to put a closet on over there, so he can put that storage or that closet or that furniture on the lower floor in the landlord's apartment. So that part he can put down, but otherwise he has to live upstairs because the majority of the floor is there. That's Rav. Ushmuel amar Shmuel says if it's any bigger than 4 by 4 amot, 4 more tefachim, which is about 1 foot squared. So if it's less than 1 foot squared, that's just a small hole. Okay, that's not a big deal. Just put a carpet over it. But if it's bigger than that, then that's considered unlivable. You can't live in a place that has a big hole like that. Then that's not considered usable, and in that case, the upper guy can come and live downstairs. Totally. So Rav explains his reasoning. If the majority is still there, then that's called livable space. But if it's less than a majority, and certainly if it's 4 by 4 tefachim, then no, he cannot come down, because a person can live on 2 stories. Many people that live in a house, 2-story house, you live upstairs and you live downstairs. So he'll put his bed upstairs, and he'll put his table or his armoire downstairs and in the landlord's apartment, and so that's perfectly normal, and you can live upstairs and downstairs, and therefore he cannot totally move in to the landlord's apartment. Shmuel says no, if any more than 4 by 4 tefachim is broken, then he can totally move everything down into the landlord's apartment, because a person cannot be expected to keep going up and down, up and down. It's not like today when we have lots of different rooms and stuff. They had like 1 or 2 rooms. And so it doesn't make sense to have to keep going up and down. And, when you want to eat, you have to go down. And then you want to get dressed, you have to go get something from downstairs and then get dressed upstairs. People don't live like that. And therefore, we can move totally down. Okay, we resolved that. Now we're asking, what were the terms of the agreement when he first rented this apartment? Idamar aliyah zo azda. If the renter said, I want to rent this apartment, and he points to the upper story, and that's what they agreed to, well, that's gone. It'd be the same like we saw a case earlier. If I say, I'm going to rent this house, and then the house falls down, well, there's no more house. So the owner doesn't have to provide a different house. This house that you wanted to rent is gone. Okay, that's it. The deal is off. But if the renter says, I want to rent an apartment from you, any apartment, then the owner has an obligation to find a different house for him. Listen, I was renting you this apartment, it's gone. I have to find a different one down the block. And so he has to find something else to rent. That's like a rental car company. You guaranteed you're going to give me a car. This one is broken, so give me a different car. I don't care which car you give me. Rava says, it's talking about a case where the rental agreement was this upper story that I'm renting to you, the owner says, I'm renting to you. When it's up and usable, you'll live there. And if it breaks, then you'll come down and you'll live on the lower story. So that was all part of the agreement. So that makes sense. But the problem is, isn't that obvious? If they specified all this, then what is the Mishnah teaching us? There's no chidush here. Of course you can come and live down there. That's what they agreed to in the first place. Rava says, it's similar to Rava, but they used more ambiguous language. The owner said, I'm renting to you this upper story, which is on top of this lower story, on top of this house. I am renting to you. He didn't say explicitly that if it breaks, you can move into the lower house, but he did mention the lower house, and by doing that, he gives a lien, gives his obligation to provide the lower house for the upper house to be on top of. Since he mentioned that, therefore, if the upper house is broken, that gives the right for the upper guy to come and live in the lower house. And so it's not explicit, so therefore it is a chidush, but they did give some language that would indicate that the lower house has to be there for the upper house to be there. So therefore he's not willing to fix the upper house. The upper guy has the right to the lower house. We have a similar case, not with living, but with vegetation. Someone says, this vine that's on top of the peach tree, vines, they're long and they grow on top of things. And so here's that vine on top of the peach tree. I'm selling you that vine. V'ne'kara parsek, and sometime later, the peach tree is uprooted. Now there's no more peach tree. The vine, where is it going to rest? Obama said, "If Rabbi Chiya v'amar hayav ata la'amid lo parsek kol zman shadalit kayama." And so the case came to Rabbi Chiya. The guy that bought the vine said he guaranteed me a vine on a peach tree. And so now look, there's no peach tree. He has to rebuild he has to replant the peach tree. And the other guy said, I sold him the vine. Well, I didn't sell him a peach tree. I have to make a peach tree now. And Rabbi Chiya ruled that yes, the seller has to go and get another peach tree, put it there so that the vine can rest on it. Even though he only sold him a vine, he sold him a vine on top of a peach tree, and therefore he has to provide the peach tree as well. That's the same thing here, since the landlord said, I'm going to rent you an upper story on top of a lower story, and now if the upper story is broken, he can fix it. But if he doesn't fix it, now he says, well, you can't just give me anything else. I wanted the upper story on top of the lower story. So if I don't get the upper story, then you have to give me something else. You give me the lower story because you said, in fact, you're obligated to put the lower story there so that I can have the upper story. So I have a right to the lower story, even though if there is an upper story, I can't just live in the lower story because you only rented me the upper, not the lower. But I have a right for the lower to be there so that the upper can be there. Therefore, if the upper one is gone, then my right goes down to the lower story, and I deserve that as well. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.